On this episode of Kenversations, I'm privileged to be talking to Mike Baker, who I first became aware of in Sleazy, Jesus and the Splatter Pigs, one of the best named bands ever. Hard to forget. And his most recent project is the Toasted Puffins.
Tufted.
Huh?
The Tufted Puffins.
Tufted. Oh.
Tufted Puffins.
Tufted Puffins.
Best band I've been in yet.
Well, looking at and I did read the webpage, so it's apologies for fucking up the name.
That's all right.
But
you're not the first.
Yeah, it looks like it's not quite an all-star band, but people who definitely slogged it out in the second wave of Cleveland punk.
Yeah. Life. Well, we just picked up our original bass player, Ken Brown. Moved.
He was in the Mice, was he not?
No, Ken was in Sleazy Jesus. That's when I first met him. He played in a few bands around. You're thinking of Brian, our new bass player, but he wasn't in the Mice. I thought he was too.
Okay.
He was in the Beatnik Termites.
Yeah.
And you know, he's in every. He was in Bluto's Revenge. He was he's in every single band that's ever come out of Cleveland. So he is definitely an all-star. You know, and we just picked him up right as the pandemic hit. So we're back up and running. We played a couple shows, and we're doing really good. Yeah.
So, tell me about your musical genesis. First off, how old are you? When did you?
I'll be 65.
Goodness.
In January 8th.
So you graduated high school in like 75?
Yeah, 75.
Okay, so you actually could have gone and seen Caribou. And
I did.
So tell me about that. Tell me about the scene, being an 18-year-old in the punk scene in Cleveland.
I actually got into the punk scene when I came to college at Kent. I grew up down around Cincinnati, and there was nothing happening down there. But when I got to Kent, it's like that's when Devo was a bar band, and you know, Tin Huey, and that's the first stuff I started seeing that really kind of warped my head into a different direction.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's when, you know, the punk thing was happening with like Rubber City Rebels and you know, the Hammer Damage band, and JB's Down was cooking at that time, and but at that period in Kent, there wasn't like this solidified idea of punk music being a thing. There was just all of these super weird bands out to do whatever they felt like. So it wasn't like
it was punk ethic, not per se
exactly
punk music.
It was before people started really calling it that, I think, and so it was really amazing, man. I mean, everybody I knew was in a band, and it didn't matter whether you could play anything or not. You know, it was like if you had the right energy, if you had the right head, you started and you got better. But man, was there some good music back then. Just anything you could think of, someone would try it, you know. Just weird stuff all over the place. It was a wonderful time. So I got into it. I was a trumpet player, and played a lot of jazz and stuff like that when I was in high school. And you know, came up here and I was living in a dorm. So you know, I would practice once in a while. And the guy next to me, Dan Garman.
I've heard the name.
So Dan was was living in the room next to me, and we kind of hooked up a little bit, and he said there was this party happening. Did I want to go to it and bring my horn? I'm like, oh, all right. So we went to this party. We met this guy, Mike Bowles, who was a drummer, and we just jammed out at this party and got into all of this wild kind of punk, Miles Davis-y kind of stuff, just throwing it out there. And we ended up putting this band together called The Juice. And The Juice was originally me and Dan and Mike Bowles, and I was running my trumpet through like a wah-wah pedal and a couple of effects and things like that. It was all like electrified, but it was all improvised. There was no songs, there was nothing. We would just get up and whatever happened, and it got really pretty good. And we ended up bringing Scott Pickering in for a little bit. And then Keith Bush.
Was Pickering at Kent?
Huh?
Was he at Kent?
Yeah. He was
never
at Kent.
Knew that. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, he was playing in all of the bands, a lot of bands down there. Let me think of who he played with. I mean, he played with us. He played with, there was like a rockabilly band he played with. Vaguely Familiar. I think he might have been a little bit in Spike and Vein then.
Yeah.
I'm not sure. That might have been later when.
I think that was a little bit later. Like, more like
because we're talking like 79, 80.
Yeah, I'm thinking Spike and Vein was 83, 84.
Yeah.
So the only Shaker Heights punk band.
Yeah, but that's kind of how I got pulled into the whole punk scene. And that was just another like weirdos doing weird stuff on stage, but it was pretty good, and that kind of like wet my whistle for playing that kind of music. Before I was all trying to learn to read and
to
actually play, and then that just opened the door.
Pickering's sort of like Cleveland's John Mayall on drums, I mean, the family trees that erupt off of Scott Pickering are vast,
He's one of the best drummers I played with.
And artists.
Absolutely.
He's an artist.
Absolutely. Oh, well, he painted my guitar.
Did he really?
Yeah, I'll show it to you. It's really a wild... My prized possession is that guitar.
So did that band make it out of Kent? Or?
No, of course not.
Okay.
Nothing made it out of Kent. We basically played for mostly each other and the people that lived in Kent. I don't think anybody... I mean, maybe a couple people came up to Cleveland once in a while, but there was a ton of bands down there. And the thing, too, is the people in Cleveland had it together about recording and having record labels and stuff like that. Nobody down there did. Mm-hmm. Nobody had any money. We couldn't record. I got some cassette tapes, but that's pretty much it,
Were there tapers in that scene? Like, were there any of me?
There were, but honestly, everybody was flat broke, so it was mostly like boombox taping and that sort of thing. But yeah, I mean, there was the whole... I mean, that was when, to get around, you sent cassette tapes everywhere. So that's what was going on. I mean, especially Keith Bush was really good at like being in touch with people all over the place and, trading off music and... knowing like where underground record labels were and things like that. So,
and the fanzine scene. Probably.
Fanzines, yeah. Well, there was that place Spin Dizzy. That was like a record store above this grocery store. It was this little record store that Keith Bush ran, but it was also where like all of the really weird writers would hang out all day and like drink and write. So all of these fanzines came out of there, like tons of them. Like Tommy Strange was up there, Randy Russell, who did one called American Job, which actually got turned into a movie that he starred in. that's weird. That came out of there. But yeah, and Keith would do, and they were a little bit like music fanzines, but a lot like literary crazy writing, so it was a little different. It was those were really good. I collected a bunch of those.
That was such an important part of pop or alternative pop culture of that era, replaced by websites at this point. And blogs, and it's sad to see self-publishing, much like regular publishing, sort of go down the toilet,
Yeah, it's nothing's rare anymore, nothing's special, and that's a hard thing to deal with. It's like if you got a hold of one of those, like if you got a hold of a fanzine from New York, and you were the only one in town that had it, it was like you wanted your friends to read it. It had like this cash to it or this buzz about it, and the internet has nothing like that. It's like, oh yeah, here, go here and check this out. And it's not like...
You can't touch, feel, smell it,
No.
rip it, read it. Well, I guess you can read it on the toilet, but that's just not the same way.
Yeah.
It's I think we're lucky to, I call our generation the cuspers, because we're technically baby boomers, yet we're raised with one foot into what sort of became the digital era, you know, and
Well, that's how I make my living. I'm a computer programmer.
Are you?
So.
Are you?
Yeah.
How'd you morph into that?
Necessity.
When did that happen?
Well, let's see. That was in the late 90s. So I was already playing in Sleazy Jesus and Hucklebuck, and I was cooking to make a living, and then I got hired at the Ritz-Carlton. So all of a sudden, cooking became kind of serious, and I ended up like becoming a chef, and I was like a chef for Sheridan. I was a chef for some private restaurants. Did that for about 10 years, and that killed the music because there's no time. Yeah. It was just, oh my God, I got to go make a living somehow. But I hated it. I absolutely hated it. Finally, I just broke and couldn't do it anymore. And a friend of mine had a restaurant in Bracknell, and I had just started like teaching myself HTML because it goes back to the whole DIY thing. It was like that was before the internet was very commercial. Like there were just HTML web pages, a little bit of database, nothing special happening. It was all new, and I was interested in it, so I just taught myself enough to make web pages and things like that. And the guy at the restaurant was called Lure, and he was like, you should do a website. And I'm like, okay. And he wanted an animation, so I figured out how to do this like JavaScript animation of a fish with a lure and one day I'm in the back, and he said, hey, these guys out here want to talk to you. And I go out and they go, did you make that website? And I said, yeah. Turns out the guy was from a contractor for NASA.
Wow.
And they hired me into NASA to do like web design for this contractor NASA, and from there I just kept taking jobs in the industry.
Did you dare write Sleazy Jesus and the Splatter Pigs on your application they made you fill out?
No, but back then it was the Wild West, so those were the kind of guys who were okay with it. Yeah, sooner or later you just got to own up to that stuff.
Well, at least that industry is art reverent. So
it was.
Yes,
it was.
Before the commercialization.
Yeah, I'm finding out that it's kind of like a big fraternity now, and it's really like I worked for a startup for a while, and all nice people, but really, I was like 50 something. They were, 20 something, and had very little depth. Like, I had a guy, like, they were all into Star Wars, all right? And I'm not, I think I dropped like 3 hits of acid and went to see it originally when it opened, and that was okay, but it's nothing I'm interested in. But they were really offended by this, all right? And this one guy came up to me, and they were talking about, I was like getting some coffee or something, and they're talking about whatever's going on in the new Star Wars. And they went, oh, wait, have you seen it yet? And I go, no, I'm not going to see it. Go ahead. He goes, you're not going to see it? And I'm like, no, I don't like it. I'm not interested in that. Well, do you like Star Trek? And I go, I watched it, it's okay. I like it better than Star Wars, but, And then he said something that just chilled me. He goes, well, are there any franchises that you like? And I'm like, franchises? Is that how? I mean, there's directors I like, there's genres I like, there's like, actors. I never thought of films in terms of a franchise.
Yeah.
That just wrecked me. It was like, oh, come on, man. What are you talking about? A franchise. That's, you know, you're going to group it by marketing technique.
Yeah. Yeah. And you know, you bring up Star Trek, and one of my best friends has been a Trekkie since the first incarnation or first series, and he talks to me about how I wouldn't believe how much disdain the original series fans get within the Star Trek community because it's so, they say it's so hokey and everything like that. And to me, you know, I like you, I watched probably every episode of that series because it was on channel 43 or 61, and there was nothing else to watch.
Yeah, well, when it was out, it was the coolest thing going. But,
yeah.
You know.
But I've never seen a story on any of the other ones that made me want to watch them.
Yeah.
You know?
But I've always loved film. I've always loved, you know, actors and, you know, like really intense directors like Werner Herzog, and I've always been into that.
Oh, yeah.
So the idea that all you're watching is something a franchise markets to you, just, that tore me out. I was like, damn, I got to get out of here.
Cultural creases.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me about, like, Ubu. You know, what was your exposure to them?
Okay, like I said, I was down in Kent. Heard their records a lot, saw them at JB's Up. At least it was David Thomas and Tony Mamone and doing something. I don't know if it was exactly Ubu. But, you know, certainly when I got to Cleveland, I saw them a bunch. And, and I wasn't at the original Pirates Cove or anything like that.
Or the Mistake or anything like that.
No, that was before I got to Cleveland.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I knew Tony pretty well, and Scott Krause, and you know, a lot of people that played in it.
It was funny when after Pickering started to get me to come to the punk shows to tape them, realizing, oh my God, I know all these people. They all work at Record Revolution.
Yeah, the one that blew me away though was Tin Huey. Man, was that a good band!
I only had their album, and
I saw them a few times, and I think I saw them at this like there was a radio show in Kent called Fresh Air.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
yeah.
I
used to listen to it.
Yeah, so it was like always on like midnight to 6 in the morning. Brian Chandler was one of the hosts. But that did more to open me to music than anything else in my life. That they played the strangest stuff that was going, you know, Henry Cow, you know, just all of the weird experimental no wave music, stuff that you're just never ever going to hear on any other radio station, and that would go all night. And they put together this show that had Gong, the Zoo Band, Fred Frith, Oscar, stop it. It had, and Tin Huey was playing it. And it was like this all-day thing in this theater. It was amazing. And so, you know, I went to see that, and that was really nuts. And then I think I was talking to Chris afterwards. I don't know exactly who I was, but he was telling me that, yeah, they were getting on a plane and going to California. You know, they had this big record deal.
Yeah.
And I guess on the plane over there, they found out their record deal got crushed.
Right.
And, yeah, so, but man, that band was great. Ralph Carney, wow.
Yeah. Rest in peace.
Yeah. No, he was cool.
We really, and it's funny, you know, I came to appreciate Cleveland in so many ways from leaving Cleveland and traveling, and one of the biggest ways was how many Cleveland bands people in Germany and around the country knew, and they couldn't get 100 people into a bar in Cleveland.
Absolutely. I mean, Cleveland was a serious hotbed of that type of music, whether like people of the time knew it or not. I mean, you know, time going on has really showed that it had its own flavor and it's had its own importance. Yeah. Oh, my dog. Quit it. Stop it. But,
So when you were young, what grabbed you first musically?
jazz.
What kind?
Well, I started out learning, I mean, really traditional stuff, really,
Like Bix by your back?
well, yeah, I guess. Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, that kind of stuff. But, that's when I was maybe 11 or 12, learning to play trumpet. And then in high school, I played in a lot of big band stuff and a little bit of, like, trio type. But I didn't really get turned on to Miles Davis till I got to college. And...
Was it connected with LSD?
Huh?
Was it connected with opening up your brain?
Everything's connected with LSD sooner or later. But, yeah, and I guess, I didn't really know Miles. I'm sure I heard Miles. You can't not have heard Miles, but it never clicked.
Yeah.
And, when we were playing that party, everybody was like, wow, that's really Miles Davis-y stuff. I was just blowing. I was just, like, making sounds and but then when I heard what he actually did, I was like, holy shit. That's just an avenue I could go down pretty quickly,
You're one of the first people I've interviewed that hasn't answered with the Beatles.
I like the Beatles. I mean, but the Beatles, when that was happening, I was maybe like 6 or 7, or, the big Beatles thing was pretty early on for me. But I can remember listening to them on my little transistor radio and digging it. I like the really weird shit.
Yeah.
A lot better than, the pop songs. But,
more avant-garde rock music is what grabbed you, or did you really ignore rock?
No, in high school, I was very into, like, prog rock. Like Yes, and,
Sure.
that kind of stuff. I love that. And Black Sabbath. I really like Black Sabbath, I remember. And then, since I was from Southern Ohio, there was a little bit of Southern rock thrown in there. A little bit of Allman Brothers, but, that's kind of what I was in high school. And then, the offshoots of Miles started happening, like Weather Report and Return to Forever, and that really, upside. I guess they called that fusion. There's an opener on that. But I don't know. Fusion always seems like really a wimpy. That was way better than fusion.
Yeah.
That was something much different.
Like to me, fusion is almost the softened down edge of the squonky jazz and the experimental.
Mm-hmm.
Like Jeff Lorber and stuff like that. Once it got so smooth, or
and that term seems that way to me too. But that's not Weather Report. And that's not.
Yeah.
Return to Forever. I mean, they were balls out players, man.
Oh yeah.
That was some really challenging stuff they were doing.
So when did Sleazy Jesus start? How did that?
Okay.
begin?
I moved to Cleveland. I took horrible cooking jobs and just started meeting some musicians up here. I wasn't really playing. I was moved into the firehouse on Scranton Road. A friend of mine bought it for like $18,000.
Wow.
All right, so it was just a wreck, and we built a theater on the second floor. We used to have shows up there, and But anyway, so I had run this club called The Jungle.
Sure.
Down on University Circle?
Yeah, underneath the ice cream shop.
Yeah.
Shop. I saw a terrible parade there.
Okay, it was a completely illegal club.
Yeah.
Ran for one summer. It was the greatest.
Summer of '84, if I'm not mistaken.
Might have been, yeah. Got closed down right when it was starting to get really, really popular and too popular to actually exist anymore. Yeah. I actually had Camper Van Beethoven booked in there the next week. And it was like, shit. You know, so he got closed down. Fred Frith played there.
Did he?
Yeah.
Wow.
So did Savoy Brown.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. I mean, it was packed and uncomfortable for terrible parade.
I know.
Can't imagine it for someone big.
Well, it was by the medical school, and this one doctor who was graduating came over one day, and he goes, "Look, I used to be a promoter for like big rock shows," and he goes, "Can I rent this place for a day? And I'm just going to book some people in here, and you know, have my friends come over, and it'll be free, and you just take the beer money." And I'm like, "Sure," you know. So he booked Savoy Brown.
Wow.
And they showed up, and they had like this truck, and they cut down and they looked at it like, holy shit. And Kim Simmons is like, wow. It's like, we haven't played anything like this since we were teenagers. And they're like, we love it, you know?
That's cool. That's cool.
So they brought down a few amps and the drums, and they played it, and Robert Jr. Lockwood played there that day, and trying to think. I know, pretty sure David Thomas did some stuff there. The guy who did Shockabilly played guitar with Rakes. I'm having a brain misfire here. Oh man, why can't I think of his name? He played there twice. I mean, it was really weird. We would just get these strange people
Reverend
calling up.
Horton Heat, you mean?
Huh?
Not Reverend Horton.
No, I'll think of it.
That's
like
all
I said,
right.
I'm 65 soon.
When it pops back in
yeah,
there, I
you
don't
know,
mind.
things don't always work.
Linear is not necessary in a conversation.
That's true. But so you're asking about Sleazy Jesus.
Yeah.
So I'm living in living in this firehouse, and one of the bartenders that was at the Jungle was moving to Europe, and she had this guitar, and I'd never played guitar, you know. And she's like, "You got to buy this guitar. You have to buy this guitar." So she sold me this guitar, and I sat around with a bottle of whiskey, and somebody showed me bar chords, and you know, I had a Ramones record, so I learned as much as I could on guitar. And about 3 weeks later, Pats and the Flats was doing the Battle of the Worst Bands contest, and the guy who owned the fireplace, his name was Neil Peckler, had two names, Sleazy Jesus and Splatter Pigs, and we're like, well, let's do both of those. And then it sounded like a like kind of Latino to us, so we decided that we were going to be this Latino gang, but disco. So we dressed in all of these wild like disco clothes, and we didn't have a drummer, so we had like a 100-watt bass amp and this little drum machine that played Latin 1, 2, and 3. So we we got Mike Salinger to turn the drum machine on and off, and we wrote all of these songs to this Latin beat 1, 2, and 3. Nobody could play. We had a trombone player, we had another guitar player, we had we had one female singer at the time. Neil played bass, you know, and a soul trombone, single trombone. That was Bill. So we ended up like, kinda winning. we kind of got robbed of the title at a thing at the Fantasy, but we were pretty much the worst band in Cleveland. Which, if you can't market that, then get out, you know. So we ended up like kept playing, and I got better on guitar and wrote better songs, and we got like real musicians in, and that went for a while. It turned into a pretty good band, but it was all out of that, the Battle of the Worst Bands.
What other musicians were involved in that event that you can recall?
I remember Randy Russell, the guy I was telling you about who did the fanzines, had a band called Burnt Spatula that was a bunch of Kent players who came out. That was a really funny one. Who else was in it? The band that we like tied with was We Fucked Her. And it was like guys from that metal band Destructor,
Okay.
which kind of didn't. That was kind of cheating in my,
Yeah.
we were really, really bad. We were.
You were more amateur than them, Yeah.
Yeah, we. I think one of the reasons we won, the lead singer was this woman, and she showed up at the show with no underwear and kept dropping her microphone and bending over to pick it up. So there was that factor. And we all dyed our hair. I had like really long hair at the time, so we all dyed our hair black with this really bad dye. So in the middle of the show, it's all like running.
Dripping.
Yeah, it was a mess, but it was really fun. But that band went on to. We got to open for a lot of really good people, but we had a thing where we would build a piñata. It started out with, we were doing an Easter show, and we built a piñata we made a Jesus piñata, and it was like maybe this tall, and it was it had like cat's eyes in it. It was all made out of paper mache, and we filled it with condoms and like rubber cockroaches. And funny thing was, I was building it in my apartment at the time, and these Jehovah's Witnesses came to the door, and I just invited them in and let them talk, and just kept working on this like hideous Jesus that was all emaciated. It was in a pair of like cut off shorts. I was gluing hair under its arm and all of this stuff. Anyway, so we did this show, and basically it was at the end of the show, we would bring out the thing and gave everybody sticks, and they beat Jesus apart, and I don't know, it was just goofy stuff. But that got written up in the Plain Dealer by this guy who went on to be like a right-wing columnist, about how horrible it was that down the street were these people like counting the strokes of the whip by lighting candles, and I'm like, that's a lot grosser than what we were doing, But it caused all of this freaking ruckus, man. But that,
Any
publicity like that you can't buy, man.
That's right.
So after that, we kind of got a reputation, and
I was sure you were Latino when I saw you at the public theater Visa and Mars thing, and I thought you identified yourself as Ricky.
Yeah, Little Ricky was my character in that band, and we used really bad accents. It was all like Lucy and Desi, there were so many wrong things about that band, but it was so much fun. It's
the
like
kind of stuff you couldn't do today without raising a ruckus.
No, that one. I can't see that one playing. I don't know. Who knows, man? There's a big market for that right now. Maybe people are so fed up.
I do think that the pendulum is swing back from all this, PC shit and the cancel culture or whatever you want to call it, or not being able to handle art.
Yeah,
that is offensive, and I'm sorry, but there's an edge of offense, and to anything that's created, somebody's gonna not like it. But think of, I've often pondered what would Lenny Bruce be saying today, and he'd be right on the list of people that you can't say that, and my God, he fought for the right to be able to say that,
I did stand-up comedy for 10 years.
Did you? Tell me about that.
Yeah.
Tell me about your stand-up.
That happened late. Trying to think of when I started. There's a guy named Dave Schwensen who runs, he's really cool. He runs a stand-up class at the Improv. All right, and you pay, I can't even remember how much. It's not much. And you go in for like 6 weeks every Saturday, and they kind of teach you how to write a 5-minute set. and teach you all about like what you need to know if you wanted to like actually get into comedy. And I was unemployed and like sitting around and saw an ad for it. I'm like, I always wondered if I could do that. Let's go find out. And so I got it, but at the end of this class, you do a show at the Improv, which is pretty exciting, but they pack it with everybody's friends, so you're gonna do good. You're gonna think you're really good after that, because nobody's gonna tell you you're not. So after that, it's kind of, stand-up comedy is really strange. It's very addictive. Like once you're in, it's really hard to get out again. So I got in it, and it starts out, you just go to these open mics and you start working on your stuff, and you meet all these comics, and comics are the best people to hang out with, man. Everybody's after shows are cutting each other down and drinking and laughing, and it's just such a fun, and they'll stab you in the back, but they'll stick up for you at the same time. It's very competitive, but it's also like it's a definite group. It's a definite tribe. It's like once you're in, you're in. So I was doing. We started like they opened this club called Bossa Vita on Detroit Avenue, and it was the basement of this like bar, and these guys who ran it did such a great job with that. And it was like you had to work to get in. It wasn't like like open mics you could just kind of go, and they'll let you up. Half of the shows are really bad, but they really put like kind of a quality thing. They were working for was it Hilarities? I think so. And so they were like getting the openers from Hilarities to come down and do a set. So you got these like semi-pro guys, and then you got us amateurs who are like kind of fitting in and really getting getting to learn. Hold on. Come here. Stop it. Come here. Getting some pressure to be like really good. And at that time was when I was like just learning HTML too, and just like trying to do websites. So I built a website called Cleveland Yucks. And it was before Facebook or before MySpace or before any of that. And just kind of stop it. Let me stop him.
No problem.
Come here. Sorry. I hope you can edit.
Yeah, I edit.
Yeah. So before that, like
Some
I said,
people like Chris King, you don't need to edit because he never stops talking. And you're close. You're in second place right now.
It's the Guinness. What was I saying? I was talking
about the guys before MySpace, before Facebook.
Oh yeah, I created this like Cleveland Yucks because there wasn't. It started out just as like an email group, and then I built a website for it, and I started like figuring out what would a comic need to develop a scene. All right, because there really wasn't like the Cleveland comedy scene at that point. And so I kind of figured out how to make it so that a comic could put up a page. I could cross-reference it with all kinds of stuff. I put in a ongoing running dialogue that you could talk about shows. I did advertising for different shows and made it like kind of the center. If you wanted to know what was going on in Cleveland comedy, you could kind of come there. And it worked pretty well. It was like a little early before anyone really bought in
to the internet.
Enough to the internet. Yeah, so I couldn't get everybody to
on
like
board,
put their own stuff up and do any kind of like creative stuff with it. But it really kind of worked to put together, to connect everybody and be able to like get shows started and venues. Right now, the Cleveland comedy scene's huge.
Yes.
It's but anyway. I did comedy for about 10 years, did some shows, you know, around. I never really got very to the professional level like some of my friends finally did. We were all at the same level when I left. Some of them kept going. I got out of it, but we brought in Doug Stanhope.
Name's familiar.
Yeah, he's a real big deal comic. He was like my hero. And so I went to see him, and then I just asked him, you know, how do we get you to come to Cleveland? He goes, I've never played Cleveland, you know, set up a show. So I did, and he came, and we opened for him, and that went really well. And then I brought him again, and that went really well. And then I had kind of like gotten fed up with comedy because it takes all your energy. It takes everything, you know. And I still hadn't got my sweet spot where it was just easy and I could do it. It was still, you know, one night I do really well, one night I bomb like horribly, and that gets to you after a while. So anyway, I'm sitting at home. It's 2 months after I decided I'm absolutely quitting, and Doug calls. He goes, hey, I'm doing a show at the Grog Shop. You want to open? And this is Doug Stanhope. It's like, of course, you know, I'm not going to turn that down. That's like, you know, even though I don't want to do it again, you couldn't say no. So I got my ass handed to me that night. I bombed so freaking hard. Like, people were coming up and, man, I'm sorry for you, man. After the it was horrible. So that's kind of the last show I did. I was already had a foot out the door, but I'm like, that's it, man. I quit.
Who in your scene kind of made it, or?
There's a guy, Jason Lawhead, who's out in California doing real well. Let me think. Jim Tews is in New York doing really well. Ramon Rivas was a guy. He actually, I just saw him on one of those stand-up comedy shows. He got a special.
Wow.
Who else? Well, Bill Squire from WMMS right now. He was a guy I came up with.
Okay.
So he's like on the like a radio show, and he does comedy.
He's the funny man on the morning Rover show or whatever.
It's not Rover. He's not on. He's not MMS. Yeah, he is. He's MMS. He's I'm trying to think of what the name of the show is.
It'd be hard for me to spit it out because I don't think I've
I don't really listen
100.7 in about 2 decades.
Yeah, I don't really listen to that radio either. But he's really a funny guy, man. He's a good stand-up. And then Mike Polk.
Sure.
Okay, so
yeah, I love him. He's the freshest voice in Cleveland news.
Yeah, I remember watching him do what he's told me was his first try at stand-up, and everyone was just shocked. He was so good. Like, and he was like, oh my God, I missed it. And I'm like, oh my God. You know, I haven't seen anybody walk on a stage and take it like that.
Wow.
And yeah. No, he's a brilliant guy. But yeah, there's a bunch of them.
So how long after that did you start doing the Tufted Puffins?
And the Tufted Puffins was, I mean, I when I was finally like getting back, you know, feeling like I can deal with people again, go out again, do that sort of thing. And I wanted to reconnect with music. I hadn't played music, God, it's been like 20 years since I'd really done anything musical, you know? So, you know, I just put out a thing on Facebook, I think. Said, you know, anybody want to get together and do some music? And I think it was Mark Smith, the drummer.
Marky Mark?
Yeah, Mark. Yeah, I think he was the first one. Or it could have been that he mentioned something about, you know, does anybody want to jam? And I got to him. And then Ken popped up. It's like, hey, I'm ready. I'll do something. And then Tom who knew Mark, but I didn't know Tom. And so all of a sudden, we're like, yeah, let's get together. And I figured, we're just going to jam around and drink some beer and have some fun. And it kind of clicked pretty quick. And it was like, oh my God, this is actually really good, So we started writing some songs and, pulled the gig and went from there. And it turned into what it is. Honestly, this is the best band I've ever been in. Musically, this band is really, really good.
It's exciting.
Yeah, it is. And I actually did a whole record. My problem was I never recorded much. So
I was impressed seeing that. I've never seen anyone release it on USB like that.
Yeah, I bet you never will again either.
How many hundreds of them do you have?
Plenty, like most. But I've still got 500 Sleazy Jesus records and 500 Hucklebuck records too. Hucklebuck's something you need to talk to me about too. That was.
Tell me about Hucklebuck. I don't know about them at all.
Hucklebuck came later in Sleazy Jesus. Will and I don't know if I should tell you who the bass player was, because I don't think she wants to be associated with it anymore. Anyway, three of us. Lydia Lunch was playing, all right, and I put something together to open for her. Me and the bass player, and it was just something I kind of threw together, and I wrote these really outrageous songs that were pretty brutal. And it was all about like ugly American stuff, racism, sexism, that kind of stuff. And it was kind of country and westernish. And Lydia Lunch really liked it, all right? So then I started thinking about it, and I got with Will and the bass player, and we started putting these songs together, and it was this heavy, heavy Appalachian grunge sound. And my wife used to work for, I can't say work for, but she was involved in like underground movies, like horror movies, and she did makeup.
Okay.
All right. So we ended up getting this makeup together of these horrible Appalachian looking with scars, and we made like rubber prosthetic things on top of the drummer's head that had eyes coming out of it, and the bass player was this really tall, thin woman, and she had like a cone sort of thing with blonde hair coming off of it, and we just looked like this horrible inbred, and we started writing songs that were so brutal, but it was so funny at the same time, and we did this like really, really cool sounding swing grunge Appalachian it was right at the time when all the amphetamine reptile bands were around and all that, and we opened for Cops Shoot Cops.
Okay.
And they had us open for them every single time they played after that. They absolutely loved us. They actually were doing a record release for the last CD they put out. It was on this ship in New York, and they called me up, and we kind of like called it quits by then. But so we all got back together. We went out there and played their record opening, and they didn't play, just us, in front of like 9 Inch Nails. Like everybody in the freaking world was on this boat. Everybody, so that was pretty fun. But Hucklebuck was this really, really brutal, ugly look at what was going on. It was all inspired by the fact that the Gulf War was going on then, and that whole redneck rah-rah kill everybody thing was happening, Yeah, I got a new toy for my studio, so hopefully I'll get this new project up off.
What's your new toy?
It's a microphone that converts to MIDI immediately. It has like no latency to it. So you set it up and you can like beatbox drums into it and program it to actual MIDI drums, and it also works off of like pitch, so you can set it to like MIDI instruments and sing.
So when you say mic latency, if you sang into a mic and went through the MIDI, it would have a slight delay and screw things up?
It can.
Okay.
This is like really designed to not have that.
Okay.
But I mean, almost any, you can, it has to do with the buffer size in your
computer,
your DAW, your actual software. So yeah, I'm learning and learning and learning. I've had this forever. I've put out a few things off of it, but my goal is I have a project I call Head Cheese, and I'm working really hard to get beyond the way I think about music, the way it's like always kind of structured and always kind of, you know, to get into more what's going on into my head and getting that out into the world. And Head Cheese is going to be that project. And
hopefully not Swiss cheese with holes.
No. But my idea for Head Cheese is, number one, to put out recorded stuff. Number two, to ask people. I mean, I don't play anything. I don't know if you know that. I don't actually play any instruments. I can do some stuff on a guitar.
Bob told me you knew one chord.
Pretty much. I know bar chords. That's about it. You know, so I you know, everything I've written is off of that. But I'm kind of musical, and I can kind of get something out of whatever instrument I try and play. And you know, I did play trumpet. That's the only thing I ever really knew how to play. So, you know, to get my music out of my head, I need help always. It's not, you know, everything I've ever done, I've never actually done anything. It's always been my ideas, everybody else making it happen.
Okay.
You know, and once you realize that, it's kind of freeing. But you also need other people. So there's a lot of people I'd really love to just do something with before I croak, you know? So Head Cheese is kind of like maybe doing some recording sessions with those people for specific things. And as far as playing out, I want to make this something that I can assemble people that I really want to play with for maybe 6 months at a time. So nobody has to commit like heavily, have like the ideas, but not let those ideas dictate completely what's going on. It's just coming together, and it may be over a specific theme of music. It may be a collection of ideas I had, work some of their ideas into, but let this thing go, and not be afraid for it to be completely different the next time I put it together. You know what I mean? Like, to be able to like work with the weird shit that's going on in my head and get that out into the real world. So this beatboxing thing, because drums is the hardest part, and trying to like do anything of your own in a studio if you're going to play everything.
Yeah. This
is pretty cool. This is a game changer.
And the abilities of these beatboxes and this technology for somebody to be a virtual one-man band without having the cymbals in between their knees and everything else. I mean, you see those folks on Ed Sullivan reruns, and you know, it's admirable, but it's not listenable. And you know, but the beatboxes sure have opened up the abilities to do that, and for it to be quite good musical. So
yeah, well, the idea of covers always fascinates me. I love covers, but I would never ever do a cover the way the original band did it.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But to me, like, there's this center to any song. There's what makes it, and it isn't the tempo. It isn't necessarily the way the melody works. It isn't any like part of the song. There's just an energy to it, an essence to it that can be turned into something else sometimes too.
Yeah.
So as long as, you know, I love going way out on the fucking edge with some kind of cover and making it something that works on the lyrics or works on whatever the melody is, and takes it into a direction that you didn't expect. That's completely different. And so covers are fun for me. I really like
What covers have you done or found of?
Oh my God. Along the way, I've done a horrendous noise version of I've Got a Brand New Pair of Roller Skates. We did a goth death version of that Perubu song, I Am Happy As You Are. Okay. And that was in a band called the Coprophagists, which lasted like one gig, yeah. I don't know, I've done a bunch. I've got a really weird version of Toast and Marmalade for Tea working around in my head right now.
I don't know that.
It's a bit from a band called Tintin, back in the 60s.
Tintin?
Tintin was the band. That's one I... What else have I covered?
Can I guess that they were French?
No, they were actually British.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I just was guessing off of the cartoon,
Yeah.
Or the comic, I should call it.
I know once you heard it, you would have heard it. It was on the radio all the time back then. I remember doing one of the things I did in front of Lydia Lunch was this really drawn out, like Nick Cave version of It's a Small World After All. I don't know, that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So are you going to go see Lydia when she's coming here in a little bit?
I was, and then something came up at work and I can't. I actually had it all ready to go, and plus they're kind of squirrely about tickets to that. I think you have to buy tickets to the entire weekend festival to even go to that show. So.
Oh, I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah.
Buy tickets? I hate that shit. No, right now I think it's super important that nobody's playing the let me in for free game, because these clubs
I'm paying for everything.
Yeah, these clubs have survived and they deserve to be compensated.
Yeah, I mean, if you want music, you need to get out there and help these clubs. It's another one of those community things. Spend some of your damn money. Get out there.
So what are you doing on your beatbox? You're recording songs?
I just got it Friday.
Okay.
Last Friday. So I'm learning how to use it. But yeah, then I'm going to the first thing I want to do with it. Once I get it to where I'm pretty confident what I'm doing, is I'm going to challenge myself to put out 10 songs in 2 months that are sloppy. I'm going to do a record called Gut Bucket, first Head Cheese record, that's going to be very sloppy, rock and roll-ish stuff. Because my big problem is I'm so worried about production on things that I've been sitting on stuff that's in there for
getting
years.
It perfect never happens.
Yeah,
or you don't feel
technologically
it's perfect,
figuring out how to get it what I want to come out of it, and I can't do it, and it's I got to get past that and just play and do the goofy ass songs that are in my head and not care if anybody's going to like it or not. I mean, that's where I want to get. The guy who blows me away is Obnox.
Yes. I
started listening to his recording stuff recently, and I've seen, I've known him for a long time and seen him play live a bunch of times, but, I liked it. It was really good, and I would go see him play, but his recording...
Oh, that I haven't heard. I just meant live. I was blown away seeing him live.
Dude, listen to his recording stuff. This guy is so fearless, and so... It's such next level stuff. He piles everything in it. It's got so many references to things and so many styles in it, and and it's not like tied up in production. I think that's what I like about it the most. It's very brave in what he puts out. It's noisy. It's like, you know, chaotic in a lot of places. But man, it's just brilliant shit. It's, you know, I got to hook up with him and talk to him about his techniques because I really want to know. But
do you know him?
Yeah.
I've never spoken to him. He's someone I should put on my list to talk to.
He's a good guy. Yeah, he'll talk to you. He's a nice dude.
Nobody's not wanted to, really, you know? I mean, once word got out I was doing this, I got a big long list. And actually I had someone that we've already mentioned, they won't identify, but they said, you got to get all the people that are on their last legs. Talk to the old people first. And
thank you.
I'm sorry at 65. You're actually on the younger edge of the old people thing.
Well, we got a song called "Somebody's Gonna Break a Hip Tonight," and we wrote it about the alarm clocks because we were at an alarm clock show. Those guys kick ass. You know, they're just a really, really good band. And one of the lines in the song is, sometimes you need alarm clocks to tell you what time it is. Basically saying, you're not, you know, when you can't do it, then you're too old.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It's like, just do it. Like, I always do a show on my birthday. That's been like a tradition for me for quite a while. And it's not like, you know, to celebrate my birthday or anything. It's more taking stock at the end of a year. Can I still do this? Can I, you know, and it's like, can I do this good? It's of course I can still do it, but when I feel like I'm not really putting it out 100%, I'm not going to do, you know.
What day is your birthday?
January 8th. It's on a Saturday this year too.
There you go.
So
get the people to come to those Tuesday nights.
Yeah.
It falls on Tuesday.
No, I always do a weekend around my birthday, but it's always at the Beachland too, so it's like a tradition.
Thank God for Cindy.
Yeah, she's wonderful.
You know, but she's a patron saint of the scene.
Absolutely,
I'm concerned.
It's like the yeah, I think we had put out our record not too long before the pandemic. I think it was that summer. So we only had like a few months to try and unload any of them, and then and plus we were playing a lot. Like we gotten honed. We were like tight, good. You know, it's like you gotta play a bunch to get to that level. You know, it's like playing once a month. You're the only good thing about that is you're really excited.
Yeah.
But we were playing shows all over the place, and so
like how far? All over Northeast Ohio.
Chicago.
Wow.
Where do we play? We played Chicago. We played. Farthest we've gone is Chattanooga, Tennessee. We just played Indianapolis 2 weeks ago.
We're at the patio?
No, at the Melody Inn.
Okay.
That was great. That was great. We played our first night. Stop it. Here's another dog. We played our first night back.
Like it's so scary.
Yeah, he doesn't know. So the first night back, the first show we played since the pandemic was at the Beachland, and then the next night we were in Indianapolis. So we got a whole like weekend thing out of it. That was really fun. Good. Yeah.
What was the scene in Indianapolis? To me, I used to work at the Ford plant there. It was always I thought, a notch more conservative town than Cleveland.
I don't know much about it, but the Melody Inn has a really good scene going.
Does it?
Yeah, they're really good. They got like a video cast.
Is it in Broad Ripple or?
I don't know the place.
That's sort of like the Coventry area, Indianapolis.
I would think so.
Yeah.
It seemed like that.
Yeah.
But they've got like a weekly, video podcast that they do. It tells about all the shows and shows videos from all the bands. then they simulcast you live while you're playing. So there's like a video of the show. They've got their shit together, man.
Well, that's what she's set up to do now. They finally put in a real good video system.
Well, I'm thinking maybe got like 15 minutes worth of good stuff out of this.
No, we got tons of good stuff out of here.
Mostly drunk and babbling.
All right, so tell me about your peppers. Let's hear about your pepper crusade here.
These are Carolina Reapers. I always grow peppers like every year, and I make a couple batches of hot sauce. That's kind of my domestic thing.
So is this hotter than average Tabasco sauce?
You know, it's well, Tabasco, yeah. It's a definite hot sauce. It's not Tabasco.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Gives you a little hit there. But you were gonna actually eat a piece of one of these.
I'm gonna eat one.
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna sit in your seat and eat.
All right.
Eat a little bit of this and see what happens.
I was full. Do you need a knife?
Let's just take a little.
Wait a minute, just so you can get. I'll give you a little bit more light so you don't miss it.
So this is sort of like, you know, what the kids do on these TikTok videos and stuff like that. So we'll join the younger ranks of.
Have you got a cold beer?
Yeah, I've got one right here.
Okay. Always be prepared. Oh, dude.
There, that bite I got it.
Yeah. It's so hot, it's like tastes like metal.
Yeah, it's. Oh, yeah, I'm getting the hiccups.
Yeah. Oh, you got a while to go, buddy. I wouldn't eat any more.
I'm not. Hopefully this will get a gazillion views. Me suffering. Bob Vigilant, you were right.
That's supposedly the hottest pepper there is. I'm sure it cuts down the Scovilles a little bit that it's grown in Cleveland.
I was going to say, yeah.
So it's probably only like 1.5 million Scovilles. What's a jalapeno? 260?
Something like that. What's a habanero?
Yeah,
oh, my goodness. Well, oh gosh.
You want some milk?
Nah.
You're braver than me.
I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm okay. Thank you.
He's smelling it.
Oh, thank you. You might be a better farmer than a musician.
I wouldn't doubt it.
Though God has a lot more to do with this than whatever he may be.
I told you not to do that.
I know, and
You
so
know?
did Bob, but
Uh-huh.
for the sake of...
Alright, so it's not my fault.
I know. And I'm glad we did that at the end.
Yeah.